Welcome back, everyone. This is first week of Web Fundamentals, and this is the lecture about Flex. Okay, and then in the afternoon session, we'll do a Flex demo. I'm going to open up this lab code reviews area on the calendar in after this lecture here. I'll let you guys know when you can sign up for lab code reviews, but we'll be doing them Wednesday through Tuesday. So you're going to have to get it done at some point. Just show a core assignment in a group setting. And so you'll need to sign up for that. I'll let you know in the Discord when that's open. And by the end of the day, we want to do these different assignments: flexible columns, FlexR blocks, GitHub blocks, and Flex navbar. So yesterday we learned about inline block. And today we're going to pivot from that rule. Even though we showed you how to use it, we're going to do something different today, which is a better way to do things. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and present what I see here first, and then I'll give you a better example if I can show one using Flex, and how I would use Flex to make a page work. So let's look at this here. I'm gonna create a new Visual Studio Code. Okay. So if I copy the path now, here it is. Here's the 3 columns. We want this lower column to be on the right-hand side next to these 2. So the way we need to do that is by looking here and seeing who the parent is. What is the rule for what it is now? Column is displayed as inline block. And if that's the case, why is it that these 2 are lined up on top of each other? This one is displayed as inline block, each column should be inline block, but yet this one is on the bottom. Let's read why. We have shown one way to change the position of the elements on our pages using the display property with inline block and inline block. While we can certainly attain whatever layout we want using that approach, there are never newer and perhaps more convenient, powerful options we can use. One thing we may have noticed laying out our website using inline block is how sensitive it is to hard-coded sizes we apply to it. While we can include percentages, sometimes there is a phantom extra space that is added into the layout that can be hard to deal with. Consider the following 3 columns of text. So this is what we have. When using inline block, we have to have our columns. When using inline block, to have our columns display next to each other, the white space, extra spaces, tabs, and new lines all count as blank text element that takes up space, even if we rewrite our code so that the next div begins after the previous div. So it's talking about this space here between lorem and ipsum. I guess this one doesn't fit in this corner, otherwise it should. The way to remove these white spaces, the way to go around this thing here, not completely going around and eliminating the space, is to make the divs connect here on the same line instead of being indented neatly like this is here. So there's a weird trick about inline block that it depends on the way you position your div, your HTML, that you would have to make it unreadable, like having closing and opening divs on the same line. Just for a simple rule like that, it makes no sense to remember this rule here. So inline block has a big flaw in it, and you'll run into this flaw occasionally and not know what the issue is. So there's a better way, which requires using this rule here, flex. So inline block is a really great way to work things until you run into this flaw here that requires you to arrange your code in a strange way, that you have to find the line where it connects. So it's just more trouble than it's worth. I used to use inline block until I started as an instructor here. I was aware of flex, but I thought inline block makes sense to me. In flex, you have to know a little bit more rules, but you can make them work to your advantage, and it's not so bad. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but you'll get the hang of it. So the way that flex is different, well, let's take this here. Take this as well. Now these are side by side and in the center. So you can achieve this look with the squares, the divs that you align in your block, in your row. You can first apply this rule flex. When you apply it by itself, you apply it to the excuse me, to the parent that holds each column. So the parent is the container. There are 3 columns here: column 1, column 2, column 3. The container has display flex on it. Without display flex, this is what it would look like. It would be 3 stacked on top of each other, because whenever you create a div, it stacks on one another, even though they're in this container. Now we want this container to have them in a row. So we say to the parent, for the parent to contain its children in a row, you need to apply flex. It needs to be a flexible parent. Okay, now it has flex on all of its children, but as you noticed, it stretches to the full height of its parent. In order to prevent that, we apply the second rule, align items center. Then we can do some other things as well. You can say to the container, we want the container to be even wider than it is. So what if our container was this wide? We can also say justify content space between. Now we have those 3 columns, and there's an even space around them in this block, or space around. That'll align them like this, or space evenly. And no matter how much I close here, well, if this width was a percentage, let's say, if this width was like 80%, and I were to stretch the width, I'd also have this row that would stretch with it like an accordion. So Flex has lots of advantages to it. Plus, it allows for a dynamic website. So we'll talk about the different rules that go along with Flex. But the first thing we need to know is that in order to apply Flex, you need to find the parent and see that its children, only its direct children, are going to have that effect on them. Also, all the rules that you apply to Flex have to be in the container, in the parent of all the items that you want to be flexible. Okay, so we'll go through all the Flex rules that we can apply, understand how it works, and why it's, well, we already know why it's better. It's because of that inline block rule that you have to indent your text at different places. But okay, do we understand why there's an advantage to Flex, and how I just explained that in order to apply Flex, you have to apply it to the parent for the children to be in order? Okay, let me take a poll to know how well we're understanding this idea. All right. So this is a practice assignment. We're given some HTML. We're given some CSS. Everything that I need to do here is already here. So I think I copied too much. Okay, so I'm taking what's in here, adding it to my CSS here. All right. What do we need to do here in order to fix this image? And why? Why does it work this way? So I have a, what are we looking at here? We're seeing this yellow column, this red square, this blue square, or this blue rectangle. It's supposed to look like this. Why doesn't it look like this? Why doesn't it look like this? Any ideas?
Because of all the spacing.
Spacing? What do you mean by that?
Like in the code itself.
What do we have in the code? We have a container, and that's the width of 950 pixels with a silver background, and it says margin 0 pixels auto. So that's what makes this silver, giant silver container in the middle of the page. Okay, it has a width of 950 pixels. It only has a width. The height is determined by these items that are stacking up on top of each other. This green box has a certain height, and it's stacked on top of this blue box, as well as it's stacked on top of this yellow here that's or actually this red one. Seems that, well, if we look in the code, these yellow ones are in the red ones already. Okay, we have this top nav. What is the top nav? Top nav is the green section. So we have this green section here. It's called top nav. It has a height of 150 pixels. Okay. So then we have this. It begins and ends here. Then right here is this one called row. Okay. Row is at the same level as far as sibling wise, is the same level as top nav. So it's going to go underneath it. And row itself
You
is
need to
where
put
we need.
display flex on row.
So if we say display flex on row, and row is the container for side nav and main. And main is the one that holds sub content, and row holds sub content here as well. If we say display flex, then not only do the ones in here line up inside the main, which is what color is main? It's red. It lines up at 2 levels, because if I delete here row, this is still awkward. It's because row works for both what's at the blue and red block level. Here it is without it, Ken. Okay. This blue and red need to be at the same level. So we added row here. Now they're at the same level.
What
Now
would
we need,
happen if you put display flex in the container?
in the container, then the top nav would be at the same level as the row. The row is what contains the blue and the red. If we wanted display flex on the container, then the green would be lined up with the blue and the red, or it would try to line up. Let's see what it looks like. See, now it's so out of order you don't even see the green.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, so then we put it back here as well on the parent holding the yellow. Sub-content are the yellow.
You mean row? You put flex.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay. So now they're lined up in a row. What if I said to the sub-content, I want the margin around you, that space around you, the force field around you. Maybe you should expand it on your left a little bit. So I'll say left 30 pixels. Now there's some space and it's too much. So we'll say 20. Okay, that's a little bit better. I think 15 is probably the best number. And we notice we need some space above you. So we can say margin top 5 pixels. It's too little. Maybe 15 as well. Okay, that's all right. What if we just said margin all around? If you just said margin, that's applying it to all spaces around. So they all have a force field of like 15 pixels. Oh, I didn't put pixels. Okay, that's a little better. But wasn't there 4? No, there's only 3. Okay. I'm just losing my mind here. Okay, so now we need to fix this purple one. We need to push it to the right. So if we say margin left 10 pixels, a little more. Then we go and we have this pretty much done. That's, oh, we need to separate the blue and the red. So we
And
say,
also the green from the top now?
yeah, so we say margin left 20 pixels, margin top for both of them, the blue and the red, say margin top 20 pixels. Needs to be in the red as well, so we'll say on here. Oh, and this one needs some to the left as well.
And the green on the top. I think I had to put it in for the container instead because I wasn't sure of the green.
This is one of those that
This
you
was
need.
padding, not mark.
Hey Josh, could we do padding maybe on the inside of the silver container?
Yeah,
What's the rule with margins that the divs stacked on top of each other? The one that has the greater height gets the absorbs the margin padding. We'll look that rule up in a second here, but that's pretty much it. Okay, so we add a little bit of padding everywhere. But the main point was to line these up in a row, blue and red, and these yellow blocks in a row as well. Okay. There's also another rule here, justify content. Justify content allows items that are in a row to behave with the width that they're allowed. Just as I had the accordion view of something, stretching it with the width of the page, we can have children that live in a parent that will stretch to the width of its container. Let's go ahead and take an example here. Is there, where do I get these? I think I had these ninja images here from the game. I think I'll have to use the columns. I'll just use these. Okay, let me just undo the code here. We said we wanted to give this one 1,000. And so see how the gray now, that's the full width of the column, of the row, excuse me. And along these spaces available, we want all three of these paragraphs to be their own column, not just lined up next to each other like this. So what we want to apply as a rule is first align item center, remember, because without a line item center, it will stretch to the full width, the full height of its container. If it doesn't need to be that full height, it will stretch down to the height of the column only necessary to contain its information, with the padding that the header tags have, as well as these p tags. Okay, but we want it to stretch across, and the way to do that is by using justify content rules. So if you start with flex start, that will keep them in the same position that they're already at. If you say center, it will take the center of the column as the place for all the available content. So the center of this gray row, this center area, is now the place for all the content available in a row. If you say flex end, then it will put everything on the right-hand side. Justify content flex end puts it all on the right-hand side of this row. Space between puts each column at the leftmost and rightmost side and the one in the middle gets the space divided for both ends. So we get the left and the right side. If we added another column here, they would divide the center between themselves. So
Random question.
yes.
What would happen if you added padding to that gray center to add like padding on the left and the right? Would it take that, or will it still?
Yes, it would take that. So if you say on the columns, padding left
No, on the container.
on the container.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we also have a way to do that without adding so much padding. It will find some space on the edges for you. So if we erase this padding and say space evenly, there's an even space between each column here. If we say space between, it goes back to the edges. If we say space around, you see there's a half of that size that there is between each of the content on the last most edges here. It's only half the size it is in the center between the pieces. It's a little different than evenly, which puts an even space around all the content. On the inside here now, they're more spaced out on the edge. There's less column width. But this is the way space around works. Okay. And from now on, we'll be looking at ways that we can look at pages and decide for ourselves, if we were to build something like this from scratch, how would we build it using Flex? So if they didn't give us the code for this, how would we build this here from scratch? Well, we would have a container. There would be a container all around, this gray one. Inside this gray container, they had a top nav, this green here. After that, they had this area here below. That area, let's make it blue. This area below has blue and red on the same row. Do you guys hear my Siri in the background trying to conversate? It's driving me crazy. Wow. Okay, so we have this container here that holds both the red and the blue. So we want them to be in the same row. So this blue container is what we apply Flex to. That holds the blue on the left and the red on the right. So we want them to be in the same row. Then we'll need to put 3 blocks in this red one here. And something that will contain all 3 of these here. So we'll need to put row on the container for all these yellow blocks. Okay, we wouldn't want to put it on the one that holds the yellow and the purple, because then the purple will line up with the yellow as well, or it will try to. So you want to put it on a container that holds all 3 of these yellow here. So flex our blocks. We have justified content. So instead of adding margin to this one here, we could also apply flex to the row and say justified content to this one as well. Just realized that. We have this flex nav bar. How do I make this nav bar now using flex? So let's take this nav bar. They give us a CSS? No. So I have let's take a look at it, what it looks like. So this is what I have. So let's make a background color for the whole entire nav. So we'll say dot nav, because that's the first class I see that holds everything together. Dot nav background color gray. Okay, so this is the area I'm working with. I need to make it look like this. So I think that's a little shorter, so I'll try to make this shorter as well. And so now I'm going to line them up in a row that I see here. So profile is on the same level as this list. So we'll see here, nav contains this H1 and this nav links. So if I say flex on this nav, display flex on the nav, its children will be lined up side by side. And that's what we see here. Has two children, nav links and the title. The title has its own children, but as we can see, as we can see here, it has its own children, but it doesn't apply flex to the grandchildren. It only applies it to the direct children, H1 and UL. So then we have to say to the UL, dot nav links, we say display flex. Now they're on the same row. We want them to be in the middle. So we have to say align items, center. For vertical alignment. We still have the dots, so we have to say to our list items, list style type, just list style, none. So it takes away the dots. Okay. To our A tags, we want to say text decoration.
Couldn't you just have the list style none in the nav links, since it's encompassing the links themselves?
You could do that as well. I just kept it separate. There's no reason or difference.
Gotcha.
So I have also applied text decoration none to the A tags. Suppose I haven't tried that as either. Let me see here. No, you have to apply it to the A tags directly. Text decoration none on the A tags. And I want them to be what color? White. So we'll say on the A tags, color white. Now between the two siblings here, profile and this area here, I see profiles pulled all the way near to the edge. So I want these to be as far apart from each other as possible. So I have to go to nav, where they both live, and say justify content. And who can tell me the rule that will pull them all the way to the edge?
Flex end.
I believe it
Flex
is.
Space between.
Space between?
Space between puts it all the way to the edges. And only allows space between the items. So then now we do want to add some spaces on the edges. So we say well, first let's change our H1. Let's make it white as well. Where did my page go? Did I close it? So H1, color white. And I want some space to the left of the H1. So we say margin left 20 pixels. And for the A tags, same thing, but on the right. So I'll change this to right. Actually, I need it on the UL. There we are. Now, these are still bunched up next to each other. And the reason for that is because if we inspect our page here, we look at the width of this whole area, nav links here. Each item is only taking up so much width because of the space allowed. We have to tell it stretch to your fullest potential here by using the justify content rule. Okay, what happens if we use justify content? And where do we apply it here? What do we want to apply justify content to?
In the nav links.
Yeah. So if we say nav links, justify content, let's say space between. I've applied it, but now I don't see that they've moved. So what's the issue here? The issue is that there's not enough width. So we say width 1,000 pixels. Now it's stretched the whole entire way. This whole thing now is 1,000 pixels. Maybe 1,000 was too much. I should say 600. 600 is still too much. 400 pixels. 400 pixels long puts it at the edge here. And we want to make it proportional to what we saw on the example there. If we just stretch out the window, then it looks a little bit more appropriate. Then we just color the buttons the colors that we need. But using flex now, we've made this nav bar. We have to give some width to the container where we apply justify content. Okay, so remember that. Just because you apply justify content doesn't mean they're going to stretch out automatically. You've got them on the row. You've done display flex on the parent. Okay, they're aligned horizontally. That's the first check. Second check is, do I allow them to go to their fullest width? That's justify content, space between, second check. Third check is, do they have enough width to expand into? Just because they can spread their wings doesn't mean that there's space for them to spread to. So we have to say, we're going to check the width that we allow the container for the children to live in. Then once we have that defined, we can see what it looks like at different positions. Here, there's only two things that on the same row. There's just levels of rows. Okay, so we have this row has two things side by side. The one on the right is its own container for its own flex items. And the width here for this is 400. And it's justified content space between. You can see here in the space it's allowed. Home is on the most left it can go, and sign out is on the most right. The space around that yellow space is the space allowed by the margin right and the align item center. So that area here, that purple area that I'm having my mouse over, that's the actual container for home, my profile, find connections, and sign out. Okay, so let's get a poll check. How do we feel about using flex? The three checks. Do we have flex? Do I have align items centered? Are they vertically aligned? Then checking justified content. Can the items expand to the full width? Then the width also checking that and saying, do they have space to expand into? Okay. All right, it's looking good. So we finished this now. Let's see what else is on our list of things we can do today. Pretty much come at the end of the hour, but we've gone over everything we need to do to introduce flex. We want you to use flex now as your main way of making blocks on horizontal lines. There's also flexible columns. There's this assignment called weird flex. And there's this flex game. So you can play this game here. That when you apply the right rule, for example, these three frogs, in order to get them in the row lined up properly, you would say justify content space around. This one would be, as you saw, space between. Then we learn about the flex end, flex start. You guys can learn the different rules to this game. It's something to do only if you have time to spare after doing the practice and optional assignments. Okay, the main focus should be on the core assignments and then getting through your optional assignments. So right now, we're going to open up for lab. You have that hour for lunch you can take. Then at 2, we're going to do another demonstration of flex, how I would use flex, and then we're going to open up the code review lab hours and I'll let you guys know in Discord when we'll do that. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about Flex that I can answer? How are we feeling about this new rule that we're saying to use instead of inline block? Any feedback?
Seems a lot easier.
Seems easier? Okay. That's good.
I guess my only question is, what's the purpose of inline block then? Is there ever a situation that you would use the inline block now?
Well, you can use it. The purpose of it is, well, that was the way we would have done it before Flex came into design. So Flex is making it obsolete.
Okay, so we should just use flex.
Just
most
use
of the time.
Flex.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. So if you see inline block used with any code, then you understand how it works and why it may have some flaw with it. So you can definitely understand anything that was written with inline block. But if you see it come up, you know what it's doing. But Flex is the better way. So I want to say use Flex. Okay. Actually, maybe we'll close out the option to make lab code demos. But at 3, after the second Flex demo, I want to do what we did something like yesterday, where we do a lab together and recreate something that we can present. So it'll be a good group session. So get some practice today with Flex. We'll be using Flex. I'll be using that method to do the rest of the assignments until the exam. So it's good to get familiar with it. Any other questions?
Sorry, did you go through the trigger party? What is that?
Trivia party is something we'll do on Friday.
Is it an actual party or?
Yeah, we'll be here partying together. I'll be
And if I
giving
know
you
you can
guys
also
trivia
buy
questions.
balloons and whistles. Okay.
Virtual party.
Okay, cool.
If it was a coding dojo, we'd have a pizza, an actual pizza or something.
Wow.
I mean, you can still order us pizza. I'll give you my address.
Well, I thought you guys should offer the instructors some slice of pizza each.
Hey, I'm just saying there's some Chicago deep dish places around me that offer half-baked. You can put them on dry ice, ship them across the country. They'll be just as good.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah. I'll just go to Costco. Anyways, let's go ahead and end the lecture now. You guys know what you're doing. So glad that you guys are flexible with Flex. Easy going.